now on Indianapolis This Week.
Despite knowing that we can win again in 2015, today I'm announcing that I will not seek a third term as the mayor of Indianapolis.
Mayor Greg Ballard bows out of seeking a third term. We go behind the decision, talking about his legacy and who might be the next mayor.
Absolutely phenomenal to imagine how quickly we're going to be able to change the environment for kids.
And the sweeping change coming to the IPS school board. What impact you can expect on your child's education.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
As a Marine and as a mayor, I have committed most of my life to service. But there are other things that Winnie and I want to do.
There it is, the announcement from Greg Ballard saying 8 is enough and that he will not seek a third term. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. A big week of enormous political change, the top of the list being the announcement by Mayor Greg Ballard. He confirmed on Thursday that he would not run for another 4 years, even though he is certain, in his words, that he could win. It was obviously a very tough and very emotional decision. I sat down with the mayor to talk about why make the announcement now.
The timing, I probably decided in my own mind, I was 90% there, just a few weeks ago. Okay. So it seemed like, okay, let's go do this. I didn't want to ruin anybody's elections and their cycles and the messages and things like that. So it just made sense to kind of wait after the election.
What's next? The last time we spoke, you mentioned that you would love to do something in teaching. Yeah. You even mentioned that you'd want to be a basketball coach.
That's right.
Remember that? Now there's a lot of talk that you'll maybe go end up at Cathedral, your alma mater.
Right.
What does that look like? I mean, are you looking? Would you like to go back to Cathedral? Would you like to be a basketball coach?
Well, let me say, first off, Cathedral gets mentioned a lot, and it's a great school. Anybody would be lucky to work there, to be frank with you. But we have to make sure it's a good fit for me and Winnie, right? We have to make sure, and I do have other people talking to me. So that's okay. Something in education or nonprofit would be great.
Let's now turn to our RTV6 political insiders, Democrat Kip 2 and Republican Jennifer Hollowell here at the round table. Did Mayor Greg Ballard, Jennifer, just give Democrats the biggest gift ever for 2015 when, by his own admission, had he run the third term, he says he would have won?
Well, a couple things there. Number one, I absolutely believe that he would have won, and have seen the polling and know where his numbers stand, very similar to where they were 4 years ago when he ran for re-election. But I'm sure that Democrats are celebrating. I mean, they would have to celebrate because Mayor Ballard would be, the biggest challenge for them, with a strong record of success in the city over the last several years and really high personal, popularity throughout the city. But that being said, we have more than a year to put together a candidate and a campaign. And we have demonstrated what Republican leadership can do for this city, and so I absolutely believe that we can find a great candidate. There are several options out there, and that we can win next year.
Did the mayor just give your party a gift?
Yeah, I agree with almost everything she just said, believe it or not, and that is that he was their strongest candidate. He is now out of the race.
Do you guys want a hug?
No, I don't, but because I am going to differ on some things. Okay. I think they're in a worse position, and I do think that he waited a little longer than he probably should have to help someone else get a head start. But it doesn't mean that somebody won't be able to get things put together and get out there and get it done. They will be able to, and it's going to be a very competitive mayoral race, no matter who they put up. But the fact of the matter is, Greg Ballard was their best candidate, and he's now off the field.
Do you have a vacuum? I mean, do you have people in place? I know that Jim Merritt has talked about possibly looking into this. Another number of folks. Mike McQuillan's name's been thrown out there. Public Safety Director Troy Riggs, his name is out there. Are you looking at names and lists of people?
There are several people who are interested and who are thinking about this right now. Former State Senator Murray Clark is one of those, and there are a handful of people and some folks that no one's talking about. There may be some kind of outside the box.
Can you throw out a name or two maybe that we're not thinking about?
No, but,
let me try. Jeff Cardwell, I've heard. Deborah Daniels, former U.S. attorney, so I have a U.S. attorney against a U.S. attorney.
In fact, Senator Delph, he tweeted the other day that he thinks that Ms. Daniels should run.
Yeah, so there's lots of names out there. I've even heard Robert Vane's name as a potential candidate.
But all of these folks are people who have, strong records of service and are really high caliber candidates for us. And so, over the next few weeks, we'll go through the process. They'll be talking to people and see who may coalesce around around those candidates. But I definitely think that we have already an infrastructure in place from the mayor's campaign and the county party operation that we're prepared for whoever that candidate may be.
Did he wait too long, though? If he knew, I knew that he wanted to wait. He told us he wanted to wait before the election cycle, this election cycle. But did he wait too long? Because now all these folks have to find fundraisers and people and operatives. I mean,
yeah, but again, we have a built-in infrastructure.
So you're ready. You're ready. Whatever
there's
comes.
Essentially a turnkey operation that exists from, from the mayor's effort. And so I don't think that that's too long. We have more than a year, and the Democrats still have a primary. Don't forget that. They don't have just one anointed candidate.
Ed Delaney, Joe Hogsett. Mr. Hogsett has yet to convert from being exploratory to a candidate. Right. Does he need to move forward?
He does. He needs to make a decision very quickly.
Like tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday?
I think that he's already put the infrastructure in place, however, so it's a different ball game. And he and Ed, I don't think it's good for our party if they go all the way to a primary. I'll be the first to say it. It's not the best thing. You want a unified front going into a fall election. And the other thing about mayoral campaigns in this city and in other cities, they're the least partisan office that people look to for running, and so they want someone who's going to run the city.
Well, let's head to Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of gridlock and bickering. Tuesday was a big, huge change for Washington, an enormously successful night for Republicans. The GOP picked up 7 seats with a chance to still pick up even more. So what happens in the Senate starting in January, and how will that be any different? We took those questions to Indiana's 2 top senators.
The Senate will look like it's supposed to look under the Republicans, because we have already committed that we're going to take up issues, whether they're in our favor or not. We're going to debate them, vote. If we make the case, we win. If we don't make the case, we lose. For the last 4 years under Harry Reid, we're not even taking it up.
People want things to move forward, and they don't want partisanship, they don't want bickering, they want focus on jobs and opportunity.
So you just heard from our 2 U.S. senators. Will there be any difference in Washington despite this Republican wave?
I don't think there's going to be any difference. If anything, if it could possibly get worse, it's just about to get worse. I don't have a lot of confidence. We've got divided government. We had partially divided government before. I see nothing but gridlock, vetoes, and political posturing for 2 years.
Jennifer, would you have preferred to have had the Democrats in charge so that going to 2016 you could have said, look, the Democrats, 8 years, they've done nothing but gridlock, and there was nothing we could do about it. Now you are the party in charge for the next 2 years.
Well, we've got the president to deal with, but that's a political answer. I think what matters is that we do important things to get the country moving in the right direction. And I am optimistic that the House and Senate will work together to put forward legislation that will get Americans back to work and fix some of the problems that we've seen over the past few years, and that both sides, frankly, have an incentive to demonstrate that we can make this work and that we can work together and move things forward for the country.
The economy already has improved. 200,000 jobs last month. We've had the longest economic recovery.
That didn't sell, though. On Tuesday night, that did not sell.
Well, the president wasn't on the ballot, but most of the Senate races and governor's races were in swing or Republican
What has to change for your party? Because that map got redder.
We have to have a presidential election for things to change for our party. That's when our people come out. They don't come out in the midterms, unfortunately. I wish they did, but they don't. You saw all over the country turnout was down. I mean, that's the bottom line. We're still in a strong position as a national party. We have the presidency. I'm a lot more pessimistic. I think Ted Cruz is running the United States Senate, and that's
You have 20 seconds to respond to that, and then we're going to go.
I think you're going to see leaders put forward legislation that the president should sign and hopefully will sign.
And we'll see what happens, and we'll monitor it here at the Roundtable. Thank you, Jennifer Hollowell and Kip, too. We appreciate your time. You can follow them and all our insiders on Twitter. Up next, election night was also a big, huge change and night for IPS, with 3 incumbents voted out. We'll talk to the 3 new members of the school board next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. It appears big changes are on the way for the Indianapolis public school system. After Tuesday night's election, a clean sweep for the challengers and supporters of education reform. Marianne Sullivan won the at-large seat, easily defeating incumbent board president Annie Ruff. In District 3, as you can see there, Kelly Bentley doubled the vote total of incumbent board member Samantha Adair White. And in District 5, Lanier Eccles, a top leader in the Carpe Diem schools in Indianapolis, ousted incumbent Michael Brown. We're joined by all 3 of the new IPS school board members, Marianne Sullivan, Lanier Eccles, and Kelly Bentley, for the first time together.
Yes.
Welcome to the program. You're being labeled as education reformers. What does that mean? Marianne, what does that look like?
Well, I think we talked about that. All of us talked about that a lot during the campaign. But for me, it's about really focusing on the right constituency, which are our kids, and driving all decisions for what's best in the best interest of children.
So, so for you, Ms. Eccles, are you going to change something, or is there something you need to focus on right now? Is it the scores? Is it the A through F labeling? What is that for you?
I think for me, the whole idea of autonomy is one of the biggest things that I personally, and I think all of us have agreed on, is something that we are definitely going to push, making sure that we have top leaders at the school so that they can do what's best for their children in their neighborhoods.
You say autonomy, that kind of scares me. Does that mean that people are running it independently, or do you keep an eye on what's happening?
Oh, certainly keeping an eye, but definitely making sure we have strong leaders in those schools.
Ms. Bentley, this is a return for you.
Yes.
And so what does this mean for you this time around? How will you be different this time around than in your first life on the school board?
Well,
because you know the board. I mean,
I do know the board.
You have more experience than the other two in the sense that you've been there before.
Right.
So how does this will be this different for you?
I think the difference is going to be who I'm serving with. I mean, I think that, we've got a really good group together that, understands that there's some great things going on in the district, but there's some things that need to change.
For example?
Well, I think, Lanier brought up the autonomy piece. We need to get back to focusing on what's important, which is teaching and learning and school leadership. And I think that's not a new thing in education. I mean, when we first started with public schools, the most important person was the leader of a building, and I think we need to get back to that.
So many issues to confront public school education: charter schools, school funding, testing for children, how teachers are being held accountable. Does any of that need to change? I mean, there's certain things you just won't be able to change overnight. School funding, right? It's a legislator.
We'll work on that a little bit. I mean, and I do think that that's one of the things that I can bring to this mix, is I have experience at the State House. I know a lot of the people that are making those decisions, and I hope I can be a great voice and advocate for IPS kids.
And for you?
And for me, I think it is more so the idea that no child learns the same way, and that children learn differently, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. And so being from a charter school that serves children that learn differently, we need to possibly replicate those ideas. How can we do things differently for the children throughout IPS to serve their individual needs? And so,
Ms. Bentley, you did not hire Dr. Louis Farabee. You were not. None of you were there when he was hired. Is he the right guy at the right time?
I mean, I've met Dr. Farabee twice. We've not had any in-depth conversations, but I've heard really good things, and I think that he brings a fresh look to the district, and he seems to be willing to shake some things up a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. I think we need to probably focus on how we're communicating, especially with our teachers and school leaders and parents, making sure everyone understands, what the ideas are and what direction are we moving. And I think that they've done a lot of that with their social. There's a lot more social media going on, and I think that's exciting.
The superintendent does a lot more tweeting than previous superintendents.
Yeah.
I see 3 new bosses joining the IPS School Board of Commissioners. For some employees, they may think change at this level may impact my job. So should I fear that there are 3 new bosses coming to the board? Are there going to be some radical changes?
I think when they realize how committed the 3 of us are to teacher voice, I mean, that is where I started out, was working in schools with teachers and trying to empower teachers. So I think all of us are so committed to both parent voice and teacher voice in all key decisions. I think they're going to find it very refreshing. They may be a bit surprised by that because of what they've been told to expect, but I think that we'll prove that we're about the right things very quickly with that.
We have a minute left, and I know that you folks have a lot to think about. You have a lot that you want to accomplish, but can you just give me an idea what's the sort of the first thing you want to tackle, if there is such a thing, when you come into office in January? What is that #1 thing you want to either know more about, or you want to say, hey, that needs to maybe change, or I'd like to maybe change that?
I mean, sort of the big picture thing is, how can we look at the operation of the district as a whole? to, you know, people don't like the word efficiency, but to see if there are any efficiencies that can be had, because I want to drive as many resources as possible to the schools and the teachers.
Ms. Eccles?
I'm all about working smarter, and I think that there's a way that we can definitely do that, and definitely being more efficient.
Ms. Sullivan, you get the last word.
Yeah, well, I just think collaboration is going to be key. I think there's so many great community organizations that want to help IPS, and we're going to be open to that and working with everyone.
These are the 3 newest members of the IPS School Board of Commissioners for the first time on television together.
Yeah.
Good luck in January, of course. That's okay. We will follow you every step of the way.
Thank you.
There's a hug. That rarely happens on this program, but on a Sunday, we'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies. Next, Thank you. Next, marking a somber moment in Indianapolis, 2 years to the day since the explosion that leveled the Richmond Hill neighborhood. How all that changes have come about and what processes the city's not using in that area. You're watching Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. This week marks a very somber anniversary in our city. It was 2 years ago, the explosion in Richmond Hill on the city's south side. That blast leveled dozens of homes in the neighborhood and left 2 people dead, Jennifer and Dion Longworth. The first trial for one of the 3 suspects is now set for June, and city leaders say they've learned a great deal in the aftermath of that tragedy, including Homeland Security Chief Gary Coombs. So, Chief, here upon the anniversary today of the Richmond Hill explosion, what have we learned from that?
You know, just the multi-agency response and coordination. That was a huge response from not just Indianapolis, but from all across the county and other assistant agencies from like Johnson County and other counties that are surrounding us. So it was a true test in our abilities to see mutual aid agreements work and now, you know, to fix them where we had issues or where we didn't have issues, improve them, whatever it took.
And what were some of those things? Because the department did an analysis following months after the explosion. You did an analysis of how you responded on every facet. You looked at everything.
Yeah.
From the media to your own response, fire department, police department. How are we using that information on a daily basis? I know that we haven't had, thank goodness, a situation like that again. But how are we doing it every day so that people can say, you've learned something from this situation?
Yeah, I think some of the better pieces that we learned from was the fact that we limited access. So we've used that in other situations where we started limiting access during a natural disaster, a tornado that occurred that had dropped down in a neighborhood on the west side of town. We used the same type of capabilities that we used at Richmond Hills, and that was limiting access to that neighborhood to just people trying to swing in there and try to get, you know, contractors that may not be insured or contractors that are just trying to get business that we just don't want anyone to be scammed over because we've seen it before. So we use those protective measures that we use from Richmond Hills, what we learned at Richmond Hills, to do the same for that neighborhood, and it worked out very well.
And I recall that day of the tornado, which was both on the Hendricks County and the Marion County line, and it was very hectic. It was very chaotic, and I saw that you and the department were out there trying to bring some calmness to those neighborhoods.
Yes, yeah, and you know, that's the stuff we learned from Richmond Hills, is that you got to get control of the situation as fast as you can, because it's a lot of chaos, a lot of people that are trying to figure out whether their family's okay, whether their house is okay, you know, what damages have they sustained. Sure. But the primary focus for us is always life safety, and making sure that people are okay, then, you know, making sure that they're not in a structure that would collapse on them.
For the people of that neighborhood, you sort of became the face of the city. I mean, we know that there's a mayor, so we get that, but you sort of became sort of the liaison between them and the city. What did you take away on this anniversary day? What have you taken away from that situation?
You know, I learned so much from each one of those residents from Richmond Hills, how to be resilient, how to, you know, what to do to help people. They've taught me and my staff so much over the last 2 years of how to, you know, they never stopped caring, and that was probably the most emotional set for us, is that even during this tragic time that they were going through, they never stopped caring about each other, and then they never stopped caring about us. They were always out there asking how we were doing when we were out there every day. They were always so you know, intrigued with what, you know, whether we were doing okay or if we had any needs, and then, you know, just working with them at each community meeting. I think that built a relationship of trust. is that I always made sure I told them before I told the media anything, so I could, so they wouldn't hear about what's going on in their neighborhood or with their house, before, on TV.
They were first.
Yeah.
They were first. Well, we'll see you tonight at the vigil. Chief Gary Coons, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That vigil will be tonight in the Richmond Hills subdivision. You're watching Indianapolis This Week. All this week, the Call 6 investigators have been focusing on stories that affect Indiana's children and the efforts being put forward to protect them. Online at theindychannel.com, you'll find all of our stories from Kara Kenny. She's been working on all these great stories from a new program to track down fathers avoiding child support and the new child support registry. Just go to theindychannel.com and click on the Call 6 tab. We thank you for joining us this week on Indianapolis This Week. Remember that we are always on here at RTV6 on our website, theindychannel.com, and the RTV6 app. I'm Rafael Sanchez. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next week.